I love being paid to learn. That's my job. And to be able to learn about the subjects that I love the most is even better. And so my life focuses pretty much around the outdoors. I wanted to move from Ohio to Montana because sometimes you're not born in the right place. And that's how I felt growing up in Ohio. I was always reading books and wanting that more western, the mountains, and Ohio doesn't have that. So I was hired over the phone at the Isaac Walton Inn, and I didn't know anybody, but I figured I had a job and a place to live, so I packed up and moved out. So that's where I met the filmmaker and started working for him. He came in for coffee and he was working on a film in Glacier and needed a pack mule. And so when my time was up at the inn, I started packing gear. We were filming for National Geographic programs, but those a lot of times is a lot of prep work and then you're out in the field, and so there's a lot of in-between time between actual filming, and so I started building gardens. And when we first got that property, I took a shovel, because of course before the house was built I had to build a garden, and jumped on it and just teetered back and forth. There was nothing, so I'm like, lots of rock. And so I started to pop up the rock and build raised beds. And I ended up building 220 raised beds out of stone. Because the gardens were so unique looking and everything, I started writing to magazines like Sunset and Fine Gardening and saying, hey, you want to do an article? But then they said, well, why don't you write it? And that's how I started professionally writing. When I first started, photography wasn't as important as a professional writer, but now it almost has to go hand in hand. I usually have a slew of articles that I have to get finished, and thankfully I have a couple of boys, Samuel and John, who are 12 and 14 and are still willing to be models for me. And it's nice because then they get to experience everything with me. And like with the Glacier book, it's like a photo album, because you go through and it's like, oh, that was the black bear that popped out in front of us while we were watching a loon, or that, or the birds and everything else that it's like a family photo album. When we moved over and, the transitioning and having a couple of little ones, as soon as they could start walking, well, even before, thank goodness for the backpacks with the kids, because, as soon as John could go in the backpack and Sam could walk, we were off on hikes locally. And then, of course, as we started homeschooling, you have to drag your friends along. And so I started the Homeschool Nature Club, which has well over 200 families in it now, which is kind of amazing. And so we start taking friends, and that's what's been so much fun, is to be able to introduce other people who aren't familiar either with hiking or the outdoors or this area. It's fun to take them out, especially if they're concerned about bears or anything like that. It's like, education, I think, is the way to allay fears. The more you know, the less you let the anxiety take over. I find myself recharging when I'm out, and I want to share that with everybody else. It's like you want to make sure everybody else has the same feeling. It's like, see, it's good. I think my natural affinity for the outdoors, I think it started early on. And I started in the gardens early too. I started working when I was 10 for a neighbor about a mile up the road. She had a little place called the Herb Basket. And so that's where I got the foundation, and then read constantly. And one of the projects when we did move to Great Falls is we had rented a house, and I thought, well, I'll just get a plot in the community garden in Great Falls. We didn't have community gardens. garden. So I touched base with Wade Crouch, who was the extension agent at the time, and I'm like, can we get this going? And he's like, yeah. And another friend of mine, Deb Olnick, she was a master gardener in his class. And so all three of us started River City Harvest, the community gardens here in Great Falls, at Park Place and then Electric City, and now they have places all over. And it was to encourage people to garden, to give them a place where they could do it, and then also to teach people. And then the cool thing is you're always learning something new. And even if you've been in it for 40 plus years like I have, there's always something. I mean, this year it's experiments in my garden. I'm trying cover crops in the garden, and we'll plant in between those and seeing how if it's gonna help suppress the weeds and improve the soil. And so it's always an experiment. Fail is first attempt in learning. So what? So your lettuce croaked, so flea beetles got on your bok choy. It's like next year's totally different. And that's the other beauty about gardening, is every year is a brand new start. Yeah, you connect with people, and that's the fun thing with all of it, even the outdoors too. You connect, and a lot of times they'll cross, because a lot of times outdoor people are also gardening people, because you just don't want to be inside all the time. For the boys, the one thing that I hope that they do take away is to never stop learning. And hopefully their minds, and I think their minds, are sharp enough that they're going to appreciate being able to understand and appreciate the wilderness and the outdoors as an underlier of everything they do. And to realize that it doesn't matter whether they're an engineer or whatever profession they choose, that this is always our foundation. My grandmother was always saying, oh, you better rest, you better rest. It's like, no, you gotta make the most of every day. Every day is a new start, and it doesn't have to be epic every day, but you just have to do something. I mean, that's with my business and my life, it has changed so many times, and you just adapt and you keep moving forward. Hi, this is Amy at North 40 Outfitters, and today we're going to talk about a few ways to plant potatoes.